Hello, my name is Tony Chan. I'm reporting for TelecomTV. Today with me is Raymond Zhang, the CTO of IP Routing and Transport for Alcatel-Lucent Asia Pacific. Raymond, welcome to TelecomTV.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to talk about SDNs. So what do you think is the SDN opportunity for telcos looking to transform their network business?
I think what SDN would enable for the telcos for the wider network, basically, or carriers networks, are immense. I mean, the opportunities are tremendous. Mainly in the service layers, and the ability to be able to bring new type of services very rapidly to the market, and be able to enable new business models, and I think this is one of the key things that a lot of operators, especially in Asia Pacific, some of the large operators are looking at to do.
So how do you think this fundamentally changes a telco's kind of their whole operating model, or perhaps the network, design, or their business model per se?
Right. I think the impact is, in terms of the change, is very profound. Imagine, the endpoints of the networks have changed in the past couple of years, actually, and they are no longer a fixed, customer premise device that connects into the network, and then you have, the customer environment connects behind that, and those endpoints are becoming virtual, and are becoming virtual machines where the applications runs on, and those virtual machines not only running on customer's premise in their private data centers, but also moving towards public data centers as well. And a lot of access to these applications over the carrier network is through mobile devices, for example, through vehicles and through many other forms of endpoints. And also the traffic demands are changed, and no longer be, I'm going to wanting a 10 gig from you and sign a 2-year contract with you. It's going to be like next Thursday between 2 to 4 o'clock, I'm going to need about 100 gig from 20 gig right now. So, so at the service layer, what actually SDN and some of the ecosystems of tools that needs to be deployed in this SDN framework to enable this to happen is going to profoundly impact how the operators capacity plan and evolve and deliver the services to the customer base.
So SDN has been around for maybe the last couple of years. Have there been any tangible examples that you've seen in the market for telco SDN?
Yeah, we have seen some preliminary attempts in terms of deployment into live networks. For example, some simple bandwidth on-demand applications, and mainly actually focus on data center connections, between the data center connections over the wider network, for example. And those attempts really, had gained, enabled basically the operator gain pretty valuable experiences to get to their services complex at large. How would they SDN enable them, for example? So we're still at the very, I think, beginning stages of this, and for the whole industry as a whole, a lot of people are still trying to experiment with technologies. What does that mean to their business models and to the way they engineer and evolve the networks and so on and so forth. So we are at the beginning of the era of this from wider network.
Mm-hmm. One technology or term that's always associated with SDNs is OpenFlow. But do you think that's the beginning and end of SDN, or does it go way beyond that?
Right. OpenFlow is one of the tool sets, I would say, and enables the software control layer to render executions onto the network elements and impacts forwarding planning behavior. But this is just one way to look at that. OpenFlow may be very suitable for certain sets of executions, for example, nodal executions in terms of traffic steering and in terms of setting policies at a particular node, And it does provide a kind of a common ways to enable the software layer that is policy driven and to execute things, services basically onto the forwarding node. But there are many others that are required actually when you bring a SDN-like behavior onto the wider network. It's going to go beyond probably OpenFlow in resource, and topology discoveries, and also in path computation, and all of these. There are some other ways. There are some other what I mean protocol sets needs to be introduced into the framework or the ecosystem, as you will.
Okay, so as a CTO for Asia Pacific, you must talk to a lot of customers and a lot of telcos. What is your impression of their view on SDN? I mean, do you think people are actually thinking about deploying it, thinking about trialing it, or perhaps they have deployed it already?
Yeah, I've seen different pace that some of the large tier 1 operators are taking and going towards the SDN-enabled environment. And some of them already launched some basic services at smaller scale and have learned that it is not scale. They kind of are coming back to retool. Some of them still in the labs try to experiment, and some of them still study the technology themselves at the research technology levels, for example. Yes, different paces. But by and large, I think everybody is kind of accept the fact now is that this is here to stay. This will enable them to deploy new services, enable new business models, and from what they have seen in the past. And so that's no question. It's just a matter of how would they implement them in a very practical way that where their customer base will need to come along with them as well. And that's some of the challenges on that as well.
Okay. I have one more question in terms of the carrier's perspective. What are some of the obstacles that they're seeing or that you're hearing from customers in terms of adoption of SDN for particularly telco networks?
Right. Largely, I think there are, what I have observed, maybe 3 primary obstacles. There may be others. These 3 are a bit more pronounced. And one is one is in the technology development. And large operators are somewhat not as geared to look at a software control layer versus a distributed control layer that is embedded into network elements. They know how to build large-scale networks in a distributed environment, but the skill set and experience is not yet at a software layer, for example. So this is one thing they need to skill up and gaining enough of practical experiences to be able to deploy these things a lot more, stably. And the second thing is in service definition. Mm-hmm. What actually is the services they need to offer to their customers? And how would the customer view that? And how would they monetize that? And people are still kind of in the middle of exploring many of these. And in fact, many of our discussions with operators is that, starting with that, right? Third is the existing network need to be transformed to some degree because in order to really create this SDN-enabled ecosystem, the network elements on the ground also needs to become increasingly more programmable. And how would they do that is obviously, this is a very common challenge for operators, how to evolve basically forward the underlying infrastructure on the ground, basically.
Okay. Raymond, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Today.
Glad to be here.
This is Tony Chan signing off for TelecomTV.